to another spooky storytime ASMR Sundays, where we will continue reading Halloween Party. We are getting much closer to the end. Things are quite interesting. I'm curious to see where they're going to lead. We are at 53 pages remaining, so I'm very curious to see what Hercule ends up finding out. Without further ado, let's jump right in to page 20. When he left Mrs. Butler's house, Peor took the same way as had been shown to him by Miranda. The aperture in the hedge, it seemed to him, had been slightly enlarged since last time. Somebody, perhaps, with slightly more bulk than Miranda, had used it also. He could understand why it had not become a picnic spot. One would not want, for some reason, to bring your hard-boiled eggs and lettuce and oranges and sit down here and crack jokes and have a jollification. It was different, quite different. It would have been better, perhaps, he thought suddenly, if Mrs. Llewellyn Smith had not wanted this fairy-like transformation. Quite a modest sunk garden could have been made out of a quarry without the atmosphere. But she had been an ambitious woman, ambitious and very rich. He thought for a moment or two about the wills. The kind of wills made by rich women, the kind of lies told about wills made by rich women, the places in which the wills of rich widows were sometimes hidden. He turned a corner of the pathway, feeling for a moment that his feet were much more important than his speculations. Was he taking a shortcut to Superintendent Spence's dwelling, or was he not? As the crow flies, perhaps, but the main road might have been more good to his feet. The path was not grassy or mossy, it had a quarry hardness of stone. Then he paused. In front of him were two figures, sitting on an outcrop of rock. Was Michael Garfield. He had a sketching block on his knees. And he was drawing, his attention fully on what he was doing. A little way from him, standing close beside, a minute but musical stream that followed down from above, Miranda Butler was standing. Hercule Pure forgot his feet, forgot the pain and ills of the human body, and concentrated again on the beauty that human beings could attain. There was no doubt Michael Garfield was a very beautiful young man. He found it difficult to know whether he liked himself or not. It is always difficult if you like anyone beautiful. You like beauty to look at the same time you dislike beauty, almost on principle. And Miranda, he thought again, as he had thought before, that her gravity was not so attractive. He wondered what passed through her mind. It was the sort of thing one would never know. She would not say what she was thinking easily. He doubted if she would tell you what she was thinking if you asked her. Michael Garfield looked up and said, "Ah, Signor Mustachios, a very good afternoon to you, sir. Can I look at what you are doing, or would it be incommode? I do not want to be intrusive. You can look," said Michael. "It makes no difference to me." He added gently, "I'm enjoying myself very much." Pure came to stand behind his shoulder. He nodded. It was a very delicate pencil drawing. The man could draw, Pure thought, not only design gardens. He said, almost under his breath, "Exquisite." "I think so too," said Michael. He let it be undoubtful whether he referred to the drawing he was making or to the sitter. Why, asked Pior. Why am I doing it? Do you think I have a reason? You might have. You're quite right. If I go away from here, there are one or two things I want to remember. Miranda is one of them. Would you forget her easily? Very easily. I am like that. But to have forgotten something or someone, to be unable to bring a face, or turn a shoulder, a gesture, a tree, a flower, a contour of landscape, to know what it was like to see, but not be able to bring that image in front of one's eyes. That sometimes causes, what shall I say, almost agony. You see, you record, and it all passes away. Not the Corey Garden or Park, that has not passed away. Don't you think so? It soon will. It soon will if no one is here. Nature takes over, you know. It needs love and attention and care and skill. Monsieur Pior, Miranda's voice came across the stream. Pior moved forward so that he came within earshot of her. So I find you here. So you come to sit for your portrait, did you? She shook her head. I didn't come for that. That just happened. Yes, said Michael Garfield. It just happened. A piece of luck sometimes comes one's way. You were just walking in your favorite garden. I was looking for the well, really, said Miranda. A well. There was a wishing well once in this wood. In a former quarry. I didn't know they kept wells and quarries. There was always a wood round the quarry. Well, there was always trees here. Michael knows where the well is, but he won't tell me. It will be much more fun for you, said Michael, to go on looking for it. Old Mrs. Goodbody knows all about it. She's a witch. Quite right, said Michael. She's the local witch, Monsieur Pior. There's always a local witch, you know, in most places. They don't always call themselves witches, but everyone knows. They tell a fortune, or put a spell on your begonias, or shrivel your peonies, or stop a farmer's cow from giving milk, and probably give love potions as well. It was a wishing well, said Miranda. People used to come here and wish. They had to go around it 3 times backwards, and it was on the side of a hill, so it wasn't easy to do. She looked past Pior and Michael. I shall find it one day. Even if you won't tell me, it's here somewhere. But it was sealed up. Mrs. Goodbody said, years ago it was sealed up because it was said to be dangerous. A child fell into it years ago. Somebody else might have fallen into it. I'll tell you when I find it, said Miranda. You mustn't always believe everything a witch says. I don't believe any children ever fell into it. She got up. I must go now, she said. Mummy will be expecting me. She moved carefully from the knob of rock, smiled at both of the men, and went off down an even more intransient path that ran the other side of the water. Ding dong dell, said Pior thoughtfully. One believes what one wants to believe, Michael Garfield. Was she right, or was she not right? Michael looked at him thoughtfully, then he smiled. She is quite right, he said. There is a well, and it is, as she says, sealed up. I suppose it may have been dangerous. I don't think it was ever a wishing well. I think that Mrs. Goodbody's own bit of fancy talk. There's a wishing tree, or there was one, a peach tree, halfway up the hillside, that I believe people did go around 3 times backwards and wished. What happened to that? Don't they go around it anymore? No, I believe it was struck by 6 years ago, split in two, so that pretty story's gone west. Have you told Miranda about that? No, I thought I'd rather leave her with her well. A blasted beach wouldn't be much fun for her, would it? I must go back on my way, said Pior. Going back to your police friend? Yes. You look tired. I am tired, said Hercule. I am extremely tired. You'd be more comfortable in canvas shoes or sandals. Ah, Sinon. I see. You are satirically ambitious. He looked at Pior. The tout ensemble is a very good, and especially if I may mention it, your superb mustache. I am gratified, said Pior, that you have noticed it. The point is rather, could anyone not notice it? Pior put his head on one side, then said, You spoke of the drawing you were doing because you wished to remember the young Miranda. Does that mean you're going away from here? I've thought of it. Yet you are, it seems to me, bien placé aquí. Oh yes, eminently so. I have a house to live in, a house small but designed by myself, and I have my work that is less satisfactory than it used to be. So restless is coming over me. Why is your work less satisfactory? Because people wish me to do the most atrocious things. People who want me to improve their gardens. People who bought some land and they're building a house and want the garden designed. Are you not doing her garden for Mrs. Drake? She wants me to, yes. I made suggestions for it and she seemed to agree with them. I don't think, though, he added thoughtfully, that I really trust her. You mean she would not let you have what you wanted? I mean that she would certainly have what she wanted herself, and that, though, is attracted by the ideas I have set out, she would suddenly demand something quite different, something utilitarian, expensive and showy perhaps. She would bully me, I think. So on the whole, it's better I leave here before I quarrel. I'm quite well known. I don't need to stay in one spot. I could go and find some other corner of England, or it could be some corner of Normandy or Brittany. Somewhere you can improve or help nature. Somewhere where you can experiment, or you can put strange things where they've never grown before. Where neither sun will blister nor frost destroy. Some good stretch of barren land you can have fun of playing at being Adam all over again. I never stayed anywhere very long. You have been to Greece? Yes, I should like to go to Greece again. A garden on a Greek hillside. There may be cypress there, not much else, a barren rock. But if you wished, what could there not be? A garden for gods to walk. Yes, you're quite a mind reader, aren't you, Mr. Pior? You are talking now of something quite prosaic, are you not? Unfortunately so. Arson, murder, and sudden death, more or less. Tell me, Mr. Garfield, have you been here some considerable time? Did you know a man called Leslie Ferrier? Yes, I remember him. He was in a Manchester solicitor office, wasn't he? Fullerton, Harrison, and Ledbetter, junior clerk, something of that kind. Good-looking chap. He came to a sudden end, did he not? Yes. was, got himself knifed one evening. Woman trouble, I gather. Were they all English girls? Why do you ask that, I wonder? No, I don't think he confined himself to English girls, so long as they could speak enough English to understand more or less what he said to them, and he could understand what they said to him. There are doubtless from time to time foreign girls in this neighborhood. Of course there are. Is there any neighborhood where there aren't? Ugly ones, pretty ones, honest ones, dishonest ones. Ones that do good to distracted mothers, and some who are no use at all. Like the girl Olga did. As you say, like the girl Olga did. Was Leslie a friend of Olga's? Oh, that's what got your mind running. Yes, he was. I don't think Mrs. Llewellyn Smith knew much about it. Olga was rather careful, I think. That's very interesting, said Peor. I thought you might give me the information I wanted. Michael looked at him curiously. Why? What's it all about? Where does Leslie come in? Well, there are things one wants to know. One wants to know how things come into being. I am even looking farther back still. Before the time that those two, Olga Semenoff and Leslie Ferrier, met secretly without Mrs. Llewellyn Smith knowing about it. I want to go back behind that. He had, I gather, certain disadvantages in his past. I believe so, yes. Well, anyway, it's been said here locally. Mr. Fullerton took him on and hoped to make an honest man out of him. He's a good chap, old Fullerton. His offense had been, I believe, forgery. Yes. It was a first offense, and there was said to be extenuating circumstances. I never heard any of the details. It was something that seemed to have got away to begin with. And when Mrs. Llewellyn Smith died and her will was to be admitted to probate, it was found the will was forged. Yes, I see the way your mind's working. You're fitting those two things as having a connection with each other. A man who was up to point successful in forging. A man who became friends with the girl. If a will had been accepted and submitted to probate, would have inherited the larger part of a vast fortune. Yes, that's the way it goes. And this girl and the man who committed forgery were great friends. He had given up his own girl, and he tied up with the foreign girl instead. What you're suggesting is that the forged will was forged by Leslie Ferrier. There seems a likelihood of it, does there not? Why do you come and talk to me about things like that here in my beautiful wood? I wanted to know. It's better not to know. It's better never to know. You want beauty, said Hercule Pior. Beauty at any price. For me, it is truth I want. Always truth. Michael laughed. Go on home to your police friends and leave me here in my local paradise. Get thee beyond me, Satan. Pior went up the hill. Suddenly, he no longer felt the pain of his feet. Something had come to him. The fitting together of things he thought and felt, had known were connected, but not seen how they were connected. He was conscious now of danger that might come to someone any minute now, unless steps were taken to prevent it. Serious danger. she said. Come and sit down. Your brother is here. No, he's gone to the station. Something's happened, I believe. Something has happened. He was startled. So soon, not possible. Said Espeth. What do you mean? Nothing. Something has happened to somebody, do you mean? Yes, but I don't know exactly who. Anyway, Tim Raglan rang up and asked for him to go down there. I'll get you a cup of tea. No, said Pior, thank you very much, but I think I will go home. He could not face the prospect of black bitter tea. He thought of a good excuse that would mask any signs of bad manners. My feet, he explained. I am not very suitably attired. As to footwear for the country, a change of shoes would be desirable. As Beth McKay looked down at them, no, she said, I can see they're not. Patent leather draws the feet. There's a letter for you, by the way, foreign stamps on it, come from abroad. I'll bring it to you. She came back a minute or two and handed it to him. If you want the envelope. If you don't want the envelope, I'd like it for one of my nephews. He collects stamps. Of course. Pior opened the letter and handed her the envelope. She thanked him and went back into the house. Pior unfolded the sheet and read. Mr. Gobby's foreign service was run with the same competence that showed in his English. He spared no expense and got his results quickly. Olga Semenov had not returned to her hometown. She had no family still living. She had a friend, an elderly woman, with whom she corresponded, giving news of her life in England. She had been on good terms with her employer, who had occasionally been exacting, but had also been generous. The last letters received from Olga had been dated about a year and a half ago. In them had been mention of a young man. There were hints that they were considering marriage. But the young man, whose name she did not mention, had said, his way to make or nothing could be settled as yet. In her last letter, she spoke happily of their prospects being good. When no more letters came, the elderly friend assumed Olga had married her Englishman and changed her address. She had not worried. It fit, Pior thought. Leslie had spoken of marriage, but might not have meant it. Mrs. Llewellyn-Smith had been spoken of as generous. Leslie had been given money by someone, Olga perhaps. As Beth McKay came out of the terrace again, Pior consulted her as to his surmises about a partnership between Olga and Leslie. She considered a moment, then the oracle spoke. Kept very quiet about it, if so, never any rumors about those two. There usually isn't a place like this, if there's anything in it. Young Ferrier was tied up to married woman. He might have warned the girl to say nothing about him to her employer. Likely enough, Mrs. Smith would probably know that Leslie was a bad character and would warn the girl to have nothing to do with him. Pior folded up the letter and put it into his pocket. You do not know when your brother will be back. I have no idea. They didn't say what they wanted him for. There's a lady here to see you, she said. Been waiting some time. I told her I didn't know where you'd gone exactly or when you'd be back, but she said she'd wait. She added, it's Mrs. Drake. She's in a state, I'd say. She's usually so calm about everything. But really, I think she's had a shock of some kind. She's in the sitting room. Shall I bring you in some tea? No, said Pure. I think it will be better not. I will hear first what she has to say. Monsieur Pure, at last, it seems so long. I am sorry, madame. I have been in the quarry wood and talking to my friend. Nicholas and Desmond. Yes, I know, I wonder. Oh, things, all sort of things. You are upset, said Pure gently. It was not a thing he thought he would ever see. Rowena Drake upset, no longer mistress of events, no longer arranging everything and enforcing her decisions on others. You heard, haven't you? She asked. Oh, well, perhaps you haven't. What should I have heard? Something dreadful. He's dead, somebody killed him. Who is dead, madame? Then you haven't heard. He's only a child, too. And I thought, oh, what a fool I've been. I should have told you. I should have told you when you asked me. It makes me feel terrible. Sit down, madame. Sit down. Calm yourself and tell me. There is a dead child. Another child. Her brother, said Mrs. Drake. Leopold. Leopold Reynolds. Yes, they found his body on one of the field paths. He must have been coming back from school and gone out of his way to play in the brook near here. Somebody held him down in the brook, held his head underwater. The same kind of thing they did to the child, Joyce. Yes, I can see it must be madness of some kind. It was a very wicked thing. You must tell me, madame. Yes, I want to tell you. I came here to tell you. Because you see, you came to me after you talked to Elizabeth Whittaker. After she told you something had startled me, that I had seen something in the hall of the house, my house. I said I hadn't seen anything. Because I thought, she stopped. What did you see? I had to have told you then. I saw the door of the library open rather carefully, and then he came out. At least, he didn't come right out. He stood in the doorway and pulled the door back quietly and went back inside. Who was this? Leopold. Leopold, the child that's been killed now. And you see, I thought oh, what a mistake, what a horrible mistake. If I told you, perhaps you'd have gotten at what was behind it. You thought, Pure said, you thought that Leopold had killed his sister. Is that what you thought? Yes, that's what I thought. Not then, of course, because I didn't know she was dead. But he had a look on his face. He's always been a strange child. In a way, you're a little afraid of him because you feel he's not quite right. Very clever and high IQ, but all the same, not all there. And I thought, why is Leopold coming out of there instead of being at the Snapdragon? And I thought, what's he been doing? And then, well, I didn't think of it again after that, but I suppose the way he looked upset me, and that's why I dropped the vase. You thought Leopold had done it. Yes, I did think that. I thought it explained the way he looked. I thought I knew. I always think I've thought too much all my life that I know things. That I'm right about things. And I can be very wrong, because you see, his being killed must mean something quite different. He must have gotten in there, and have found her there, dead, and it gave him a terrible shock. And so he wanted to come out of the room without anyone seeing him. And I suppose he looked up and saw me, and got back into the room and shut the door and waited until the hall was empty before coming out. And yet you said nothing. You didn't mention it. Who it was you'd seen, even after the death was discovered. No, I You see, he's so young. Was so young, I suppose I had to say now. 10, 11 at most. Such sad words, Pure thought, some of the saddest words in the world. Mrs. Drake seemed to know what he was thinking. Yes, she said. I did it for the best. I meant well. One always thinks one knows what is best to do for other people, but one doesn't. And so he's waited until he got the boy alone and drowned him in the brook. So he shouldn't speak, so that he shouldn't tell. If only I had spoken out. If only I told you or told the police or told someone. But I thought I knew best. Only today, said Pure, after he sat silent for a moment or two, watching Mrs. Drake where she sat, controlling her sobs. I was told that Leopold had been very flush of money lately. Somebody must have been paying him to keep silent, but who? We shall find out, said Pure. It will not be long now. It was not very characteristic of Hercule Pure to ask the opinions of others. He was usually quite satisfied with his own opinions. Nevertheless, there were times when he made exceptions. This was one of them. He and Spence had a brief conversation together, and then Pure got in touch with the car hire service after another short conversation with his friend, Inspector Reagan. He drove off. Then he sought an audience with Miss Emmeline. I'm sorry to disturb you at this hour. It is no doubt the hour of your dinner. Well, I do you at least the compliment, Monsieur Pure, to think you would not disturb me at either supper or dinner unless you have a valid reason for doing so. To be frank, I want your advice. Indeed, Miss Emmeline looked slightly surprised. That does not seem very characteristic of you, Monsieur Pure. Are you not usually satisfied with your own opinions? Yes, I am satisfied with my own opinions, but it would give me solace and support if someone whose opinions I respected agreed with them. She did not speak, merely looked at him inquiringly. I know the killer of Joyce Reynolds, he said. It is my belief you know also. I have not said so, said Mrs. Emmeline. No, you have not said so, and it might lead me to believe. On your own part and opinion only. A hunch, inquired Mrs. Emmeline. Her tone was colder than ever. I would prefer not to use that word. Very well, then. I will admit I have a definite opinion. What I would like to do, mademoiselle, is to write down 4 words on a piece of paper. I will ask if you agree with the 4 words I have written. Miss Emmeline rose. She crossed the room to her desk, took a piece of writing paper, and came across to Pure with it. You interest me, she said. 4 words. Pure had taken a pen from his pocket. He wrote on the paper, folded and handed it to her. She took it, straightened out the paper, and held it in her own hand, looking at it. Well, said Pure. As to 2 of the words on the paper, I agree, yes. The other 2, that is more difficult. I have no evidence. And indeed, the ideas had not entered my head. But in the case of the first 2 words, you have definite evidence. I consider so, yes. Water, said Pure thoughtfully. As As soon as you heard that, you knew. As soon as I heard that, I knew. You are sure, and I am sure, and now, said Peor, a boy has been drowned in a brook. You have heard that? Yes, someone rang me up on the telephone and told me, Joyce's brother. How was he concerned? He wanted money, said Peor. He got it, and so, at a suitable opportunity, he was drowned in a brook. His voice did not change. It had, if anything, not a softened but harsher tone. The person who told me, he said, was riddled with compassion, upset emotionally. But I am not like that. He was young, the second child who died, but his death was not an accident. Do you know what I think of first in such a case? I should say, said Mrs. Emmeline, that you are more concerned with justice than with compassion. Compassion, said Peor, on my part would do nothing to help Leopold. He is beyond help. Justice, if we obtain justice, you and I, for I think you are of my way of thinking over this. Justice, one can say, will also not help Leopold, but it might help some other Leopold. It might help to keep some other child alive, if we can reach justice soon enough. It is not a safe thing. A killer who has killed more than once, to whom killing is appealed, a way of security. I am on my way to London, where I am meeting with certain people to discuss a way of approach, to convert them perhaps to my own certainty in this case. You may find that difficult, said Miss Emmeline. No, I do not think so. The ways and means to it may be difficult, but I think I can convert them to my knowledge of what has happened, because they have minds that understand the criminal mind. There is one thing more I would ask you. I want your opinion. Your opinion only this time, not evidence. Your opinion of the character, Nicholas Ransom and Desmond Holland. Would you advise me to trust them? I should say that both of them were thoroughly trustworthy. That is my opinion. They are in many ways foolish, but that is only the ephemeral things of life. Fundamentally, they are sound. Sound as an apple without maggots in it. One always comes back to apples, said Hercule Pure sadly. I must go now. My car is waiting. Alright guys, I think that's a good place to stop for right now. We are down to the final 30 pages, and I'm thinking next Sunday we will finish it. Things are getting crazy, and another murder. Well, I certainly hope that Hercule Pure can figure this out before anyone else gets killed. I will see you guys back here next week.